The attack on the U.S. Embassy in Libya, actually the U.S. consulate, I should say, in Libya, and the protest outside the embassy in the Egyptian capital of Cairo come as both countries struggle to establish democracy following the Arab Spring. And CNN's chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, is joining us. Christiane, you had a chance to speak with the Libyan ambassador to the United States. What did he tell you?
Well, I did, Wolf, and obviously he's very sad. He knew Chris Stevens personally. He really thanked him for all the efforts he had made on behalf of Libyan democracy, as well as all the U.S. leadership and those other 3 diplomats who were killed as well. But I asked him specifically, the order from the U.S. is to hunt these people down and bring them to justice. And we've heard reports of drones going out to do surveillance and provide that intelligence to the Libyans. I asked him, could they do it? He said they had to.
You remember last few weeks there were also car bombs in Tripoli, and we've been able to capture some of the people who are responsible for that. And that was a line to lead us to that who is responsible and the financial support they get from overseas. It is our priority. We must know these people. We must know these cells who are working in the dark, you know, to destabilize Libya and to destabilize our relation with the friendly countries.
So, Wolf, he's very clear that these people attacked the United States, but also threaten the Libyan democracy as well.
What about Egypt, Christiane? You've spent a lot of time there, and you've gotten to know some of these new leaders, these Muslim Brotherhood leaders. The Egyptian president, Mohamed Morsi, was democratically elected. As far as I know, as we speak right now, he personally has not yet condemned the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Cairo yesterday. Why is that?
Well, we have asked that, and I have spoken to him. I'm one of the few who's actually interviewed him, and this is previously, and he talked very, very strongly about a moderate democracy. I have asked why hasn't he spoken out yet. People tell me that he's traveling. There has been reaction from the Prime Minister of Egypt, who condemned the film, because in Egypt it was about this anti-Islamic film that created the attacks against the U.S. Embassy yesterday. Prime Minister condemning the film, but saying that there was no excuse for violence in Egypt and that protesters had to protest peacefully, and asking the United States, by the same token, to move against people who incite hatred and who incite intolerance based on religion or ethnicity. But he also said to me that, look, our future lies in strong relations, not just in our region, but with the United States. They're very clear, the Egyptians, that their future lies with good relations, good bilateral relations with the U.S. And you know, earlier this week, a high-level U.S. delegation, State Department officials, business leaders, were in Egypt to talk about moving forward together.
Listen to what Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential nominee, said about the Arab Spring, and you covered it very, very thoroughly. Listen to this.
Over the last several years, we've stood witness to an Arab Spring that presents an opportunity for a more peaceful and prosperous region. But it also poses the potential for peril if the forces of extremism and violence are allowed to control the course of events. We must strive to ensure that the Arab Spring does not become an Arab winter.
A lot of people see that Arab winter. Do you see that yet?
Well, listen, Wolf, I think what candidate Romney has said is what a lot of people say. Of course, you want to see this Arab Spring emerge into a democratic reality for this region, and a moderate one. But I don't think it is an Arab winter, and nor do most people who look at what's going on there. They point to the moderates who've won in Libya, for instance, and even though it's a Muslim Brotherhood candidate who's become president in Egypt, they talk about moderation, about upholding treaties, about democracy, about equality for all, about keeping good relations with not just Israel and the peace treaty, but also with the United States. In Tunisia as well, it's about moderation. But the fear, of course, is those small groups of Salafists. These are the extreme, real extremists, the sort of, if you like, the Wahhabi, Saudi-style extremists who are not at all happy at the democratic, moderate way these countries are going. And it's in their interest to seize on any issue they can to attack not just the U.S., but also their own governments, to try to put themselves in power. So that's what people have to keep an eye on, trying to empower these governments now and trying to help them, really get to a democracy and build on these blocks while trying to sideline and minimize the trouble that the Salafists and the extremists can cause.
Christiane Amanpour, as usual, thanks very much.
Thank you, Wolf.
And beyond the foreign policy crisis is the personal loss. We have Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's emotional response to the deadly attack in Libya.